I almost didn't go back in. I had already paid for my gas, already had my hand on the door handle of my truck, already had 17 things on my mind that had nothing to do with a brown leather wallet sitting on the edge of a gas station sink. But I went back in, handed it to the cashier, told him I found it in the men's room, left my name and number in case whoever lost it wanted to say thank you. I didn't think about it again until she knocked on my door 3 days later. And everything I thought I understood about the next chapter of my life changed in about 30 seconds. Let me give you some context. My name is Daniel Calloway. I am 51 years old. I live alone in a 3-bedroom house in a small town outside of Nashville that is slightly too big for one person and slightly too full of memories for me to think about selling. I had been divorced for 14 months when this happened. Not a dramatic divorce, not a betrayal or an explosion or a single night that became the before and after line in my life. Just two people who had grown in different directions for long enough that the distance between them became the most honest thing in the marriage. My ex-wife Karen moved to her sister's place in Memphis. We split things fairly. We still talked occasionally, politely, carefully, the way you talk to someone you once knew everything about and now have to relearn from scratch. My daughter Lily was 23. And living in Chicago. She called every Sunday, sometimes Thursday, if she was worried about me. She was worried about me more than she let on. I was fine. I kept telling myself that. Fine is a word people use when they don't have a better one. I stopped at the gas station on a Wednesday morning. Regular stop. Same place I'd been stopping for 12 years. The guy behind the counter knew my order. Large coffee, black, one of those blueberry muffins wrapped in plastic that I knew were terrible and kept buying anyway. I used the restroom before I left. The wallet was sitting on the edge of the sink. Small, dark brown, the kind that folds once and fits in a back pocket. A few cards visible through a small window on the outside. Some cash folded inside. I picked it up, looked around. Nobody else in the restroom. I could have left it there. Somebody would have found it, probably. Instead, I took it to the counter, told Mike, the cashier, that someone had left it in the men's room, asked him to hold it in case they came back. He asked for my name and number to leave with it. I gave it to him without thinking twice, drove to work, forgot about it completely. The knock came on a Saturday afternoon. I was in the backyard, pulling weeds from a garden I had planted the previous spring with more optimism than skill. Most of what I had planted had not survived. A few tomato plants were doing something that technically counted as living. I heard the knock from the backyard, walked around the side of the house. A woman was standing on my front porch, mid-40s, dark hair pulled back. She was wearing a blue jacket and holding something in both hands. My wallet, not the one I'd found. My wallet, the one I kept in my back pocket, which meant she had my address from my driver's license, which meant she had come to my house. I stopped walking for a second. She saw me come around the corner and held up the wallet like a flag of peace. "I'm sorry to just show up," she said. "I know this is strange. I wanted to return this in person." I told her it wasn't necessary, that I was glad she got it back. She nodded. Then she didn't leave. "You could have kept the cash," she said. "There was almost $200 in there." I told her it hadn't crossed my mind. She looked at me for a moment like she was deciding something. Then she said, "Can I ask you something?" Her name was Margaret. She sat on my porch steps because I offered and she accepted, and neither of us had a good reason to go inside yet. She told me she had lost that wallet twice before in her life. Both times the cash was gone when it came back. Once the cards had been used. She said she had driven to the gas station to pick it up and Mike had given her my name and number. She had almost just called. Then she decided she wanted to say thank you in person. I told her it was a small thing, that anyone would have done it. She shook her head slightly. "They don't though," she said. "That's the thing. They really don't." We sat there for a few minutes talking about nothing in particular, the kind of conversation that doesn't go anywhere specific, but doesn't feel like it needs to. She was easy to talk to, in the way that some people just are. Not performing, not filling silence for the sake of it, just present. When she stood up to leave, she said, "Thank you again." Really, I told her it was no problem. She walked to her car. I went back to my tomato plants. And I thought about her for the rest of the afternoon, in a way I hadn't thought about anyone in a very long time. I didn't expect to see her again. I told myself I wasn't looking for that I was fine, that fine was enough. But 2 weeks later, I was back at the same gas station on a Wednesday morning, and Margaret was standing at the counter ordering a coffee. She saw me at the same moment I saw her. There was a half-second where both of us decided what to do with that. Then she smiled. Not a polite smile, a real one, the kind that reaches the eyes before the mouth catches up. "Large black coffee?" she said. I told her Mike had been talking. Mike had absolutely been talking. She laughed. I laughed. We stood at that counter for 20 minutes, talking before either of us noticed the time. I want to be honest with you about what came next, because this is not a story about two people who met cute and fell effortlessly into something simple and uncomplicated. Margaret had her own history, her own reasons for being careful. She had been widowed 4 years earlier. Her husband, Thomas, had died of cancer at 52. She had spent 2 years after that putting herself back together in the quiet, methodical way that grief sometimes requires. She was not looking for anything either. We were both very clear about that, which is possibly why what happened felt so disorienting. We had coffee 3 times before I asked if she wanted to have dinner. The first time I asked, she said she needed to think about it. I respected that. I told her no pressure, meant it. She called me 2 days later. Yes, she said, just that, one word. I didn't ask her to elaborate. Dinner was at a small Italian place downtown that I had been going to for years and somehow never taken anyone to. We talked for 3 hours. The waiter came to check on us so many times that by the end of the night, he just stopped coming and let us be. She told me about Thomas. I told her about Karen. We were both honest in a way that people sometimes aren't early on, the way they protect themselves by sharing only the good version. We skipped that part. There wasn't really a reason for it. She told me that after Thomas died, she had made a list of things she was afraid of. Not practical fears, emotional ones. Being alone permanently, forgetting what it felt like to be truly known by someone, letting someone in, and losing them again. I told her one understood the list. She looked at me across the table. "I know you do," she said. "That's what's strange about this. I am not going to tell you it was easy. It wasn't. There were dinners that ended in misunderstandings, phone calls that went wrong and had to be repaired the next day, moments where one of us pulled back and the other had to decide whether to wait or push, and almost always chose wrong at first. Margaret was guarded in specific ways that took me months to understand, not because she was difficult, because she had been hurt in ways that required patience I had to learn how to have. I was emotionally absent in ways I didn't fully recognize until she named them, quietly, without accusation, in the direct way she did most things. "You go somewhere," she told me one evening, "when things get real. You go somewhere I can't follow." I had heard something like that before, from Karen, years ago. The difference was that this time I didn't nod and let it pass. This time I asked her to tell me what it looked like from where she was standing, and I listened, really listened, for the first time in longer than I could honestly remember. It has been 2 years since that Saturday afternoon on my porch. Margaret is sitting in the kitchen right now, reading something while I write this. She moved in 8 months ago. My daughter Lily cried when I told her, happy tears, the kind that come out sideways when relief and joy arrive at the same time. My house doesn't feel too big anymore. The 3 bedrooms have found their purposes. The garden is better this year. Margaret has opinions about tomatoes that have turned out to be completely correct. I think about the version of me that almost didn't go back into that gas station. The version that had his hand on the door handle and 17 other things on his mind. That version almost kept walking. I'm glad he didn't, not because returning the wallet led to Margaret, though it did, but because it was the first honest thing I had done in a long time. The first moment in 14 months of fine where I did something small and true without calculating what it would cost me. Sometimes that's all it takes. One small true thing. And then, whatever comes next gets to come.